All right, in this explainer, we're jumping right into a really core concept in Christian theology. What does it actually mean to trust in the person and work of Jesus Christ? So let's get right to it. What does it actually mean to trust in the person and the work of Jesus? You might hear those terms and think they're kind of the same thing, but they're not. They're super specific. And honestly, understanding the difference is key to getting what the Christian faith is all about. And why does this matter so much? Well, the whole idea is that, according to the Bible, salvation, being saved, is only possible through faith in Jesus. So figuring out who you're trusting and what you're trusting in, that's not just some dusty old theological debate. For believers, this is everything. Okay, so to really unpack this, let's break it down into two simple parts. First up, we've got the person of Jesus. This is the who part of the equation. Who exactly was he, and why is his identity so critical? So when we say the person of Jesus, we're talking about a really specific and honestly mind-bending idea that he was at the exact same time fully God and fully man. No contradiction. This is what's often called his dual nature. So why the two natures? Why was that so important? Well, think of it like this. The belief is that he had to be fully human so he could actually die and shed blood, as a substitute for humanity's sins. But he also had to be fully God for that sacrifice to actually count, for it to be perfect, sinless, and powerful enough to cover everyone's sins, not just one person's. And look, this isn't something that was just made up later. It's all rooted in Scripture. You've got verses like Titus 2:13 calling him God, and then others like 1 John 4 saying, yep, he was fully human. It's this combo that's seen as the secret sauce, right? As God, he was sinless. As man, he could be the sacrifice. Take one away and the whole system, theologically, just doesn't work. Okay, so that's the who, the person. Now, let's pivot to part two, the what. This is the work of Jesus. Let's see how these two pieces fit together. It's pretty straightforward, really. If the person is who Jesus is, the work is what he did. And what was that? Well, it's all about his actions to save people from sin and, from death, which is seen as the ultimate result of sin. And this work isn't just one thing. It's really a 1-2 punch. First, you've got the sacrifice, his death on the cross. That's understood as paying the price for sin. But, and this is huge, it doesn't stop there. The second part is the victory, his resurrection. Rising from the dead is seen as the ultimate conquering of death itself. And this verse from Romans really captures the why behind all this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. It drives home the point that this wasn't a reward for good behavior. The whole idea is that it was an act of love for people who were, still messed up. So now we've got our two puzzle pieces, right? The person and the work. But here's the kicker. According to this theology, they are absolutely inseparable. You can't have one without the other. Let's really dig into why that is. It really boils down to a simple but super powerful formula. The person plus the work equals salvation. You need that specific person doing that specific work for the whole thing to lead to salvation. They're totally linked. And to see just how linked they are, let's do a little thought experiment. Just imagine for a second, what if you had the person, Jesus, the God-man, but he never did the work? No cross, no resurrection. What then? Well, from that point of view, it just wouldn't be enough. That verse from Ephesians says people would still be dead in their sins. That act of redemption, of being bought back, it just wouldn't have happened. So his amazing identity alone, without the action, wouldn't solve the problem. Okay, so let's flip it. What if you had the work, a sacrifice, a resurrection, but it was done by just some guy, someone who wasn't the God-man? Well, then the sacrifice wouldn't have been powerful enough, not even close. See, any other person would have their own baggage, their own sin, making them an imperfect sacrifice. A regular human's death just wouldn't have the infinite value needed to balance the scales for all of humanity. So ultimately, the work would have meant nothing without that very specific person doing it. Okay, so we've seen the person, we've seen the work, and we've seen why you absolutely cannot separate them. So now we can circle all the way back to that first big question. What does it actually mean to trust? It means trusting in both parts. It's believing that Jesus is who he said he is. That's trusting the person. And it's relying on what he did for your salvation. That's trusting the work. It's not an either or, it's a both and. And this famous verse from Romans kind of nails it perfectly. When it says, declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord, boom, that's trusting the person, his identity. And when it says, believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, yep, that's trusting the work. See how it connects both ideas right there? It presents them as two sides of the same coin for salvation. So, what's the big takeaway here? In Christianity, trust isn't just some vague feeling or a blind leap. It's a very specific confidence in two things: who Jesus is and what he did. For those who believe, it's not just a box you check once. It's the very foundation of how they see the world, how they find purpose, everything. And that really just leaves one final thought. Now that you know the who and the what does this idea of trust actually mean to you?